Welcome to the final part of our interview today between myself, Roman Polcha, and Marek Polcha, my brother. This is our final subject that we're going to be covering within the interview, and that subject is politics, philosophy, technology, and really just the future of our country and our world. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. We would like to tell you, if you are watching this right now, go back and check out some of our other clips throughout where we discussed history, STEM careers, leadership, wrestling, rural Pennsylvania, lots of cool topics. So go back and check out the earlier parts of the interview. And we thank you for making it this far. And we ask you like and subscribe and comment your opinions on the subjects down below. Okay, Marek. I would like to ask you first, what are your thoughts on the upcoming election?
Yeah, so elections are always an interesting thing for me. Just as I get older, it's really interesting to see, because honestly, it just feels like just yesterday it was the Trump and Biden election. Any election with Donald Trump is always interesting just because there's lots of baggage with him. And the stories this time are really interesting, like with Joe Biden going out over the summer and being replaced by Kamala Harris. Of course, if Kamala Harris wins, she'd be the first woman president, which would be pretty historic and crazy in America and the landscape we live in today. And Donald Trump, obviously, if he was elected, would be the second ever president to be elected. Then take a break and get elected again. So very interesting stories there. It should be interesting to see how it plays out. And I find it interesting that I live in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is the main battleground state of this election. So that's pretty interesting.
I was just about to comment on that and say that is a fascinating story for this election, that we are in Pennsylvania and there's not a whole lot of news all the time that comes out of this state, but that in this specific election, we are the key battleground state. Whoever wins Pennsylvania, there's a very high probability wins the election. So I'm glad to get your thoughts on that, and who do you think will come out victorious?
It's really hard to say because, yeah, it's a tough thing to say. So if I were to lean one way, I would lean towards Kamala Harris, just because of Donald Trump losing to Joe Biden in the last election. So I would lean toward Kamala Harris, but also I could see it going both ways. I don't see like a big landslide coming or anything, so it'll probably be close. I can't tell you definitively who I really like. If I really had one that was like, this person's gonna win, I couldn't really tell you for 100% certainty.
How do you feel about the direction that America is headed?
Um, I I don't like the direction America is headed right now, just because I feel like we are involved in too many conflicts and too many wars and stuff that we shouldn't be in. I'm very against wars, and it seems like every couple years America gets involved into a new conflict.
Yeah, especially recently with Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Gaza. Some absolutely, some honestly, some conversations that could be an entire podcast in and of
Yeah.
themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Russia and Ukraine and how that started, and Israel and Gaza and what's still occurring there. Now, one of the things that this kind of question leads into with the direction America's headed, I'll tell you, with some of these younger kids, and I'm not trying to sound like one of those old people that's like, everyone is soft, or the next generation is going to be the downfall of society. I don't want to sound like that. But, and me and you specifically have a digital design and marketing class together. And within that class, some of the behavior of the younger kids is genuinely concerning regarding the future of our country, in my opinion. The kids can't focus, they have no attention span, they are incapable of behaving, they're incapable of respecting, um, they're incapable of really sitting down and focusing and doing any real kind of work. So I wanted to ask you, with regards to Gen Alpha, the newest generation, I believe it started in approximately 2010, kids born after that. What is wrong with Gen Alpha
Um,
that's causing these issues?
yeah, so I think one of the major issues is introducing technology to kids at such a young age. I think kids need to be exposed to real world skills instead of just iPads and phones at such a young age. And I feel like it's makes kids' social skills a lot worse. One, and I feel like whenever kids see social media and they're getting on that TikTok, all this stuff when they're really little, that's leading to the behavioral issues.
Especially with the short form content.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the short form content with the scrolling and the scrolling and the
Yeah.
scrolling, it makes your attention span shorter because as we really move forward with the new technologies and the content consumption, the videos that we consume are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and we're going through them faster. Just 10 years ago, YouTube videos could be 30 minutes long. This podcast, people would sit down, they'd listen to a 2-hour podcast. Now people go on their phone and they'll scroll on TikTok where the clips are 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and if it's not instantaneously satisfying, it's a scroll to the next one, which I think is fascinating. Because I feel like if you start that off at a young age and kids are introduced to that, it has to lead to almost an attention deficit disorder, an attention disorder that is what used to be um, called ADHD will now in the future just be a normal kid's attention span. I feel like that's the direction we're moving with that. So I asked you what's wrong with Gen Alpha, and this is kind of related, and this is all under the politics, philosophy, technology, future conversation here that we're having. Is technology overall having a negative or positive impact on the future?
Um, I see two sides to this. So obviously, I think technology has positives, obviously, because it really is going to help humans a lot. It's going to help our humanity reach new heights and reach grand feats that were unheard of 20, 30 years ago. But I feel like the younger generations are really where it hits the most, as I said before, because I feel like they rely too much on it, get hooked on it, and it leads them to have negative personalities and negative attitudes towards life.
Yeah, I feel like the new technology has definitely increased and contributed heavily to the mental health crisis that we have in our country because people are constantly on social media and it's the comparing themselves to others, which we all know is something that you shouldn't do, but inherently you do. And everyone on social media looks so great all the time. Everyone looks happy, everyone looks beautiful, and comparing yourself to that is almost a comparison that you can't keep yourself with, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is really getting into my wheelhouse, this whole conversation, because we're really getting into how humans interact, social studies type topics, which is really where I thrive. And I think with is technology having a positive or negative influence on society, I think one of the scariest things that we need to watch out for is our jobs. Where are our jobs going? Because as technology increases, not just are we seeing people getting a decreased level of attention, a lack of social skills, a lack of ability to sit in a classroom and actually learn and be educated. But now what we're also seeing is commercials being made by AI, which is getting into an AI conversation. We're seeing cars that are being engineered that can drive themselves. So are we evolving to a place where we don't even need people for a lot of these jobs in the industry anymore? Because the way that capitalism works is capitalism is built on labor. A lot of it is built on labor. And the more labor that something can produce for the least amount of cost is going to churn out the most profit. Okay? And the more profit that the person at the top of a business can make, that's basically how capitalism works. That's how innovation is sparked. And yes, that creates innovation, but it also makes people cogs in a machine because people then are getting worked harder, more labor for less money in return. That's why we have unions, and that's why we have people fighting for labor rights, etc., etc. But then what happens whenever you now introduce artificial intelligence and these cars that can drive themselves into these jobs? Now, what's the need for someone who works for 7.25? What's the need for someone that works for $20 an hour whenever these things can be completely cost reduced for free? Where do the jobs go? And I feel like that is a major, major concern. And I feel like a lot of the argument I hear is, well, the jobs go into the engineering of it or the creation of it, of the technology. So, yes, we're replacing those jobs as we're losing them, but then also, what about the human creativity? I know in our digital design class we talked about artwork. What happens with artwork then? What's the point of being creative whenever an artificial intelligence can make something 20 times better than you in such a short period of time? Why would someone ever pay you for your artwork, your creativity, your humanity, whenever it can be done by technology? And I feel like with a hyper capitalist society, that can be very scary. So, another question I wanted to ask you is just what are your thoughts on we kind of hit on this a little bit, but on just artificial intelligence and how technology is evolving at the fastest pace in human history.
Um, so one of the things about artificial intelligence is, um, there's positives to it, right? Positives are it's really smart. It can come up with great ideas. It can help people that need aided in things. And something that I think that we need to start teaching is whenever kids are younger now, we need to teach them how to use artificial intelligence the right way and not the wrong way, because kids get on these artificial intelligence, they'll use it once and then they just rely on it, which obviously isn't good. They need to learn really how to think on their own. They need to know what it should be used for, not what it can be used for. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. And another scary thing to me with the artificial intelligence, just to really add on to what you said about people thinking on their own, we're moving to a point where it's almost scary because what's the point of learning? What's the point of having your own knowledge whenever knowledge is so accessible that anything can be found out by an artificial intelligence in such a fast speed that it almost feels like what's the point of taking hours and hours and hours to learn about the history of economics whenever you can look it up on an artificial intelligence and it can give you anything that you need to know in grave detail and it takes absolutely no time to learn. So it almost feels like we're moving away from people learning and to the few people that are programming the artificial intelligence. So we're gonna get really into some deep questions now, if that's okay.
Okay.
Are we headed towards war with AI? And if so, when would that occur?
No, we are not to that point.
Do you think we're headed in that direction?
No, because they're not really. So the AIs are mostly just, they're mostly just like supercomputers, right? So right now, the worst that, if an AI did go rogue, the worst that it could do was what, like, shut off our electricity, right? So when it's gonna start becoming a problem is whenever they start building AI robots and stuff that are this extreme level of intelligence like the chat GPTs have now, but in like a physical form.
I
If
think
you know
that
what I mean.
yeah, and I think we need to get a hold of it now because as long as we still have the power of controlling the engineering of the artificial intelligence in the first place, we can program them in a way in which this can't occur. But if we continue to evolve at the rate that we're evolving at, where these AIs are practically human beings with thoughts, emotions, and uh, involuntary reactions, then that could be a huge issue. And if so, when is the interesting question because with the rate at which technology is evolving, how quickly are we moving towards indistinguishable technology?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that we could see that within 50, 60, 70 years?
Um, no, I don't see that coming right now, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. I would just have to see more of how it evolved over the next like 20 years for me to make a prediction like that.
So, if I were to ask you right now, you're 100. You're 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The year is 2109.
Got it.
What is artificial intelligence and technology look like? Are we flying in cars? I know they say this every
Now
generation, but
I'm gonna.
where are we moving?
Technology is gonna be way more advanced. I feel like life will be a lot easier for humans. Humans are not gonna have to do way more as they do now because we're gonna be able to rely a lot more on technology. I don't know to the extent of how far that will go. I'll just have to see over
Is
time.
that bad for society?
Yeah, I would say so because I think these AIs, the robots, I think they're gonna start replacing the human creativity and just what makes humans humans, if you know what I mean.
The thought of 100 years from now is crazy because whenever I think about me being 100, that's 83 years away.
Mm-hmm.
Where was technology 83 years ago?
So World War II,
World War II.
about
The technology
1920s.
in World War II versus the technology currently. We just discovered the use of an atomic weapon during World War II.
Correct.
The evolution from the invention of the atomic weapon to artificial intelligence, we have more intelligence now in our pocket recording this video than they had in the 90s on an entire computer.
Correct.
And that's accessible. So just the rate at which we're evolving so quickly, the thought of where we could be in 83 years when I'm 100 is concerning. Are people going to be living forever? I mean, the questions are endless. Will we learn to travel through time? It will we learn to travel through time? And if so, when? Could that be
Um,
possible?
I think traveling into the future is possible. I don't think it's possible to travel into the past.
That's interesting.
So I feel like uh, the possibility of traveling to the future would just be um, once we develop um, the ability to move a certain amount of speed, we will be able to go into the future. There's lots of effects on time and all this stuff that could be explained in like a different episode. It's pretty confusing. I don't see us.
We'll have to have this conversation after you take physics class.
Yeah, I don't see us being able to travel in the past. That just seems preposterous to me from
But
the
you think the
perspective.
future is possible?
I think that's possible. I don't think that.
What do you think is? What do you think we're closer to? Do you think we're closer to having an all-out war over civilization with artificial intelligence, or do you think we're closer to traveling into the future?
World with artificial intelligence.
Do you think that's closer?
Yes.
Do you think that that's a legitimate concern for our lifetime?
No.
So you think that neither future travel nor war with artificial intelligence will occur while we are living.
Yes.
Do you feel like it's the thought of having children is scary because of the future issues and future problems that could be occurring in the world? Like, do you fear if you have kids, then that is a problem that they will have to deal with,
Yeah,
more with artificial intelligence?
definitely. But like, I feel like every generation has to worry about that. Every generation has thought of that in their own way, whether it be growing up in the Cold War era and knowing that your kids could be nuked off the face of the earth in the next 20 minutes. You know, you just never know. There's always going to be some kind of issue
This,
that could present.
this is
itself.
true, but at this point in time, I feel like there's a lot of concerning factors.
Oh, I agree, 100%.
I mean, climate
But
change is a natural cause on
Is
its
there
own.
really a point in time where there wouldn't be worry for the future?
No, I agree with you there, but just the direction that artificial intelligence is heading is scary. And then if you kind of try to revert and be a little bit more conservative with how you raise your children in the technology era, then where does that put them in forms of intelligence? Are they going to be significant? They're going to have the human skills maybe, but the other kids may have access to more information. They may be more like IQ intelligent, but and you may say, well, these human skills that I'm going to teach my kids are going to be more important. But are those skills still going to be valued 50 years from now?
I'm not sure. I don't. It's hard to predict the future, you know. But I could see that becoming a significant issue with how kids are these days.
Yeah. If you were going to travel into the future,
Okay.
like we're talking about, you'd have to move faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
That's basically the main way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't. Well, obviously we're not geniuses, and we don't have the technology now to do so, anyways.
Correct.
But how far into the future until you think that we see war with artificial intelligence? Because that's really what we're talking about. Or artificial intelligence just kind of beginning to run society from a political perspective. Like maybe they're now in positions of power just because they're so much more intelligent that they know how to run society better than we do. So we just start letting them run society and we just kind of live under them.
Maybe like a few hundred years from now.
Do you think that that is a possibility? Or do you think I'm kind of just like theorizing things that probably won't ever happen?
I think
Do you,
I think it's
I'm
a
sorry to
possibility,
interrupt.
but it's hard for me to think about it because I don't think it's going to be a possibility in my lifetime.
Do you think we're going to get a hold of it? Or do you think this is something that we're going to figure out, get a hold of, and fix? Or do you think this is something that's just going to, innovation is just going to spur it out of control?
Yeah, so I could see it going both ways, but it's going to be hard to control the entire world, right? Because, the United States might decide to get a hold of it, but we don't know what's going on in China and Russia and all these other countries.
And
right
some
now.
of these other countries are way more evolved than us. Like China's innovating at a technological rate extremely fast.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a time, this is scary to think about, but it's just a time when there's so many global issues that are facing our world that we need to focus on handling as a nation, not just the United States, but as a whole world together.
Mm-hmm.
We need to tackle climate change, and we all need to get on the same page with that. We need to get on the same page with how we're going to control the future of artificial intelligence, how we're going to continue to grow the economy and provide better technologies while still allowing for human creativity and jobs. And it's a conversation that could be had all in of itself in a whole podcast. So, a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that another futuristic question, but not as futuristic maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Are we soon going to colonize Mars?
No. No. I think we are very, 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 very far away from that.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues right now is we need some kind of different energy power to be able to do that. One, we need to move faster. trip to Mars at its shortest is like 7 to 8 months away. And right now, with how we build rockets, they're fuel powered, and we only have enough fuel to go there. We don't have enough fuel to go down and back. So, and I just don't see a real point in it right now. It doesn't really make sense.
If AI keeps evolving, do you think it could be used to help us to colonize Mars? I mean, we're gonna need, if we're gonna go there and colonize it, we're also it's either gonna be a dome society where we all live within an environment that is created, or we need to somehow figure out how to make Mars's conditions habitable
Hmm.
with water, temperature, etc., etc. And people like Elon Musk have talked about this being something that we really need to start investing in now.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree.
So, one thing that I would like to bring up is if we would spend all this time, money, manpower, um, to try and terraform Mars, why wouldn't we spend that trying to terraform Earth and making it a better, cleaner world for our future? Does that make sense?
I think that does make sense, but at the same, I think it does make sense, but at the same time, I feel like, especially for an emergency situation, and I feel like, I mean that is such a good point, and it's gonna require so much thought, money. The amount of money that would go into that would be absolutely insane.
We don't even know if we have. We don't even know, like, because since we humans haven't been sent to Mars, we don't know, and I don't think we know enough about it to be 100% sure that that we could even terraform it. It is possible, but
Well, until we send people there, these two
people aren't going there anytime soon.
yeah, I mean, we would have to start with smaller and it would have to grow. So I feel like the point is that if you start now, you work up towards it. Kind of like with climate change, you start solving the issue now, not because climate change is going to wipe us out tomorrow, but because if it wipes us out 500 years from now, maybe we can prevent it or begin to prevent it by acting early. And climate change is a lot closer than 500 years from now. I mean, we could see extreme negative effects on Earth within 50 years. There's places in the world that are literally going to be inhabitable within 30, 40, 50 years. Middle Eastern countries that aren't going to have enough clean water. It's going to be too hot. So, if we don't tackle climate change really, really, really quickly, I think that part of the worry is that we may be too far gone on climate change already. We may have needed to start attacking the climate change issue 100 years ago. If we would have started attacking that issue and been up ahead of our science, which we really didn't know enough science at the time
Yeah.
to start fixing the issue, we could have worked towards it for the last 100 years to get to a point where that the issues that we now are facing in 30, 40, 50 years wouldn't be issues for another 100. Now, in 30, 40, 50 years, whenever these areas become uninhabitable, the water is not quite clean enough anymore. The places are too hot. Where do the people go? The people get to start coming to these smaller areas, and then we experience major overpopulation. And then maybe a trip to Mars seems inevitable to space out the people from overpopulation in the midst of a climate change disaster. It's an interesting
Yeah, it is.
conversation. Very fascinating. Okay, I'm gonna ask you one more question,
Okay.
and then we'll kind of close up this podcast a little bit. In your best prediction, what will end civilization? Civilization started ancient Mesopotamia. Some of these first early civilizations about 6,000 years ago.
Yeah.
What
So
will end civilization? To your best prediction, what would be the best prediction?
I think it's going to be um, our own humankind's greed, probably. The climate's obviously a huge issue. Obviously, nuclear war is a humongous issue because if we did go to nuclear war, we could definitely see like half of the population more just absolutely dying because countries like Russia and the U.S. have enough nukes to end the world. Like if they launched all their nukes, the destruction that it could cause is devastating. And all these countries now, they're in the next 30, 40 years, all the countries are going to have, all the big countries are going to have nukes. And then, what's going to happen if we go to war with the wrong country, nuclear war starts. That
So
could
your
be
best prediction would be
nuclear war.
greed and nuclear war.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So you think that we take ourselves out before the climate or the technology takes us out?
Yes.
Okay, that's fascinating. I think right now it's hard to predict. Right now, the nuclear war is definitely a scary thought, and that's definitely a possibility. I'd have to probably uh, lean towards climate change right now because it's coming on us quicker than we'd like to think, and I think that climate change, it will have a domino effect. I think that would be my guess. Would be climate change starts to occur in a way that causes us, and I'm not saying the human population goes extinct. We're talking strictly about like a true civilization.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, we had people around and animals around during thousands of years before we had civilization.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a civilization perspective, on planet Earth, we have climate change coming on us really quickly, and the effects of that are going to be devastating, mixed with greed and war and famine, which will probably be increased due to climate change. Because you're talking about nuclear war, why are we going to be going to nuclear war? Well, we might be going to nuclear war because of climate change and wars over water,
Yeah.
wars over space on Earth, and overpopulation. So I think that's why we need to start investing now in looking over other ways, colonizing Mars, or really, really, really investing in fixing the climate crisis. Okay, we're gonna wrap this podcast up here with that was some pretty deep conversations.
Yeah.
So I have two more questions for you, but they're very lighthearted questions just to end the podcast with something more positive.
Nice.
So, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Mayor James Polcha.
Yeah, so this is obviously hard to say because I don't know the exact path I'm going
You'll
down.
be 25.
I will be 25. I don't know what kind of career I want to get into yet. But hopefully by then I've graduated college.